Hello, hi there, everybody. It's Jules Chabot here, wildlife artist, Celtic wildlife artist, and it is Friday and it's 10 o'clock, just before, and it's weekly wildlife wisdom. So, welcome to you, whether you are here for the very first time, however you found me, or whether you are a regular viewer. I really appreciate you taking time out to come and listen to me, listen to nature and wildlife, and thank you for your support. And if you have just found me and you enjoy today's weekly wildlife wisdom, then do make sure you click subscribe so that each week you'll get a notification of the next episode coming up to remind you. It makes life easy for you. So welcome. And today's particular being that has come forward is the beautiful and very delicate but very strong Willow Warbler. And for me, this is a first because up until a couple of weeks ago, I'd never even seen a Willow Warbler. So they weren't in my consciousness. I didn't know much about them at all. I didn't even know what they looked like. But it all started, as I say, a couple of weeks ago. I was looking in our back garden and I spotted these beautiful little birds. And of course, because I'd never seen them before, I was like, ooh, who are they? Very pretty, very small, and very delicate, and sort of got a pale grey head and wings and back and tail. But then their chest's quite pale, and their face. And they've got like these lemony hints under their wing, just under their wings and on their face. And apparently this is the youngsters that have more of the yellowy hue to them. But just really beautiful and very busy in the garden, flitting around, a small flock of them that have been visiting regularly every day for the last few months. And they are getting ready to migrate back to Africa, which is, again, for a bird that's probably about that big and probably weighs about, I don't know, 5 to 10 grams, I would think, maximum, to fly all of that way is just amazing, isn't it? Just incredible. So I learned a little bit about them and who they are. And of course, with nature's wisdom, you have to take into account all of the signs and build those into your understanding of what it is that part of you inside of you that's resonating with that being is saying and is offering in wisdom. And that's the way of ancient peoples, to tune into what is showing in front of you in your life, whether it be physical, seeing a bird, or noticing a magazine article and then a film on the television that has this particular being. It could be flora, fauna, it can be anything really, signs and symbols, but paying attention and being conscious and then wondering what that energy and wisdom is that can help you to maintain or regain balance and equilibrium, because that's what we're all seeking, consciously or unconsciously. All life on Earth and anywhere else it exists, who knows, is seeking equilibrium, because that's where we thrive. The present moment, in balance, flowing with what is, and being who we are, which is pure consciousness. So the Willow Warbler to me was fascinating because there's at least two elements of Willow Warbler. That is the willow, which is a tree, I'm sure you know, and the warbler themselves. So I was fascinated to dive into what that means. So I'm going to share a little bit more with you now. But I think the reason that we've seen them in our garden, I just want to finish that story off, for the first time this year, is because we have been deliberately completely leaving all our hedgerows. We've got a pretty big hedge at the bottom of our back garden and a huge hedge on the adjoining side of our neighbouring house. Huge, great big hedgerow, which must be at at least, I'd say, 10, 12 foot high, and at least the same again wide. And it's covered in all sorts of different flowers, shrubs. And so at this time of year in particular, it's covered with seeds, berries, nuts, fruits. It's amazing. And of course, that in allowing it to flourish and grow and really thrive has attracted all kinds of insects. And what attracts willow warblers, as an example, is insects. So through leaving that and allowing nature to become as wild as possible, we draw more and more nature to the areas that we're able to have an influence over. So I guess my message there is, whatever you can do, and I know some of you do this already, which is fabulous, is, you know, allow a little bit of wild as much as you can to come back into any spaces that you have to help support precious wildlife and nature, because it's so needed and it all matters, it all adds up. So let's get into the willow warbler. And what also fascinated me, which I pay attention to as well, you may know that I've been I've just started working, volunteering with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust to share more about the beaver project that they have near here, called Willington Wetlands. And of course, Willington Wetlands is full of willow, and the beavers love willow. So I thought, well, that's not a coincidence that it's the willow warbler that has turned up. So first thing I did was look into willow and explore what's willow all about and what are the messages from this beautiful tree that we can learn from. So I'm always fascinated by what I discover, and I have a lovely book by a lady that I'm very grateful to have spoken with a few times, called Ellen Sentia, and she has a book called Trees of the Goddess, and it's all from the Celtic tradition, of which she's deeply imbued and part of. And so I had a look at her description of the willow, and she writes about them, the willows being water trees. So anything connected with water, because they love the water, is all to do with our deep emotional feeling and state. So that's a very feminine quality, and it's about understanding our emotions and being able to express and allow our emotions as well. So I thought that was really interesting as a start point. And also, fascinatingly, the original source of aspirin comes from the sap of the willow tree. Isn't that amazing? I do forget sometimes, but of course, all pharmaceutical drugs originated from nature, and then they're synthesized and mass produced, which is never the same. And so the idea of it being a healer, being a pain reliever, it has great healing properties within it. All of nature has a part to play in creating balance on the planet. And this is a beautiful example of it. So ancient peoples would have known that, and they would have been able to do what was required to utilize that sap to help when people, animals, were struggling and had pain, or were needing healing. So that's also beautiful. And then the wood itself from the willow is a soft and pliable wood, which again is sort of hints at that emotional connection to being soft and pliable, so that you can bend and flow with whatever's coming. So in the tree's terms, if there's heavy winds, the willow will bend and flow so that it's less likely to snap. If it's too rigid and some force hits it, it's going to break. So that's something for us to think about. How fluid and flexible are we? But on the other side of it, there is also this message from the willow about having boundaries. So it's not being flexible and flowing at any cost and without any sense of boundary, but it's about knowing when to say no and when to allow and flow. And that's very different. And I loved what I learned from Ellen's beautiful book, because she said that the boundaries has a strong connection from Willow with Bridget, who is a fire goddess, Celtic fire goddess, and she's a goddess of poetry and healing, and she's very powerful. And I always have been very drawn to Bridget in the Celtic tradition. And so her teaching of boundaries is about knowing who we are, what matters most to us, what our priorities, our values are, and what we're willing to stand up for. And first and foremost, we need to be willing to stand up for ourselves, for our own rights, balanced and measured rights, not egocentric, entitled rights, which there's a lot of that going on at the moment in the world with humans. What's defining what's our stuff, our messiness, our wounds, our trauma from our life of ups and downs, and what's other people's, and knowing when to leave that alone and let them deal with their stuff and not buy into all that and try and fix them. And when it's stuff that we need to say, okay, I need to work on this, I need to figure out why these things keep happening to me, not with a blame and shame, but with I want to release whatever's causing me to attract these things. So to me, that's again really strong wisdom about walking down the middle way, being fluid and flexible when it's appropriate and when that's the wise and smart thing to do, but also having clearly defined understanding deep within us of who we are, what's right and wrong for us, and what we're willing to stand up for, when to act, when to step away. Not my stuff. Don't want to hang out with you guys anymore because you're really not healthy for me, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to become more like you. Also, it's about allowing healing to happen. So rather than being afraid and running away when our bodies and signs are showing us we need to heal, being actually willing to embrace that need for healing, knowing that once we go through it, we face it, we go through, we're going to benefit from that. We're going to be able to shift our life and bring more of our purpose into our life effectively for good. So that's really interesting. And then secondly, let's get into the Warbler. So we've got the Willow part, which is obviously where they like to spend a lot of their time, near water and near willows, obviously for them to at some point to have been named the Willow Warbler, I would think, because there's not a great deal of water near where we are, but they're transitory birds. So this is part of their key message. So I'm gathering they're coming through where we are, which is very rural, stocking up on all the good fats and all the fuel that they need for their long flight back to South Africa. Africa might be South Africa, who knows? They know. But they need that support and that nutrition to get them through that journey. And so they are readying themselves for this huge journey back to the incoming spring, summer of Africa and all the insects that come with that as well, because they are insect eaters, so they are carnivores. So the Celtic mythology around the Warbler, which again I always love to see what's coming forward, is they are messengers of good fortune. So that really made me feel great to know that they were coming into our garden, and on several occasions they'd come right up close when I was looking out the window and just hold eye contact with me very bravely for such small birds, and just allowed me to have a look at them. And a couple of times I had my binoculars so I could get a really good view of their beauty and to connect with their heart, which I find easier if you've got a clearer visual, but it's not necessary, but it's nice to have that as well. So they're a messenger of good fortune, luck and prosperity. So isn't that lovely? And so it is a calling to that, allowing yourself to allow in prosperity and allowing yourself to receive good luck and good fortune, which again can be often in many people out of balance. We maybe push compliments away, or we downplay our achievements because we're taught maybe when we're younger that it's bragging if we ever say we're good at things. I don't know if it is gender specific, it doesn't really matter, but for me it feels like there's more of an emphasis on females from certainly from my generation of learning as a child. Hopefully that's moving away now. But either way, whatever your gender is, or non-binary nature, it's about letting go of that and allowing receiving and receptivity, and being able to acknowledge that your strengths and your talents and your service that you can offer into the world, but without going into egoic, narcissistic, bragging, puffing up of chest and false pride and all of that nonsense. Because again, we're talking about the middle way. We're not talking about extremes one way or the other. So as I said, the willow warbler is a migratory bird. They visit the UK and other places, I think the US as well, in the spring and summer seasons of those places. And then as it approaches autumn, and we've had a quick drop into autumn here, which I'm hoping is not going to last too long, a cold spell here, they get the need, the urge, and the understanding to then make this long flight south into the southern hemisphere to Africa, where it's much warmer, coming into their spring and summer, so that there's an abundance of insects for them to eat as well. So they're in a perpetual summer cycle, which is very appealing, isn't it? I think probably not to all of us, but yeah, I like the idea of having lots of sunshine year round. So the message also from them is around this freedom and independence to become adventurers, to have that wanderlust, to follow your heart. Doesn't necessarily mean physical travel, although it can do, but about adventuring, heading towards things that you want to bring and allow into your life. It might be across continents. It might be metaphorical in terms of, for example, which also links into this. I started a few weeks ago. I was very brave after years and years from a child of being very afraid to sing in front of anybody else, but really enjoyed singing. I plucked up courage and decided to go and join a ladies' choir in Derby, near to where we live here, and I've been singing with this choir, which is wonderful. And so I jumped into that, very nervous, very apprehensive, new group of people, I didn't know anybody, and having to sing with all these people, but it's been wonderful and I'm really enjoying it. So having that spirit of adventure and that spirit of trusting that if it's something your heart's calling you to and it feels right and balanced, that you take that step. And I think the willow warblers were really sort of encouraging me and giving me that lovely confirmation that what I'm doing is absolutely right, following my heart, facing a fear that really doesn't have any real consequence. But of course, parts of me are like, if you don't sing the right note, or what if people laugh at you, or what if you make a fool of yourself, all those things. But then facing it and realizing that that doesn't happen, and that everybody makes mistakes and everybody hits a wrong note occasionally, and that's okay. So what's that for you? I'd encourage you to maybe ponder that. What is calling to you, and what is it that you've maybe been putting off, or you're a bit frightened, so you make excuses, all those things that we do as humans. And also letting go, taking a new start, embracing it and saying, I deserve something fresh and new and wonderful in my life, and allowing that to happen in this light, beautiful, elegant way, fluid way that the willow warblers really do demonstrate as they dance through in flight in the garden, picking out insects. And so they're foraging, and then they're connecting with each other, and sometimes physically touching in their group, and it's just beautiful to watch. So how can we be more like that? So, and I think also finally, I think there's a message in there just about remembering that we are nature. We're not just a part, we are nature. We depend on each other. All species depend on each other. And so it makes complete, sane sense that we must love, protect, and honour all of nature. And it seems so obvious, and I'm sure to all of you tuning in, that's obvious. As I've just said, it's so obvious, there's no other word for it, and yet there really needs to be an awakening of that in so many other people, and particularly people in positions of power and making decisions about how we move forward on this beautiful planet. So I think that's, for me, it felt like that was part of it. You know, remember how important we are, what service we can give to help to protect nature and to love nature, and not just to take. You know, we can't just take. We have to give back in equal balance. So there you are. I think that's enough for today on the Willow Warbler and us, obviously, because it's always questioning us. So I hope that's given you some food for thought, maybe some slightly different perspectives and alternative views, maybe not. But I'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. Or you can message me over on my website at juleschabot.com. So that's it for today. Hopefully, all being well, 20th of September's next Friday. So I should be back for another weekly wildlife wisdom then. So watch out for notifications. I normally send something out around Wednesday to say who it's going to be. We've got a very powerful full moon eclipse on Wednesday next week. So I'm sure that whoever comes forward to be our next teacher, species-wise, will have a connection to that, or something that will connect into that. And I'll share that with you on the Friday at 10 o'clock UK time, always the same time, always here on YouTube. And every week, who knows who's going to come and give us some more wisdom. But thank you so much for being here. As I say, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing so that you don't miss any and you don't have to keep remembering to chase up and see what I've been talking about. And if you know of any other people that you think, oh, they'd really like this as well, I'd love you to share this link, my YouTube page, with them as well. And the more the merrier, the more we can all together learn and remember and act and behave in alignment with nature, the better it is for everybody. So take care, lots of love to you all, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.